We'll see. You are live.
Good day.
Looks good. Okay. As I said, always got to check.
Essentials.
And yes. Let me see. There's this girl in Australia that has like 30,000 followers. She still does this. Some people have more faith, I guess.
That's because it's all about us just talking and not if anybody else is watching or not. That's why you don't care.
Oh, yeah. We're live. So now I got to remind to go down. There we go.
Touch me,
all right.
please.
So this is, we figured we'd do a little shut-in video conversation to talk about some cool stuff. So this is my high school friend and college roommate, Micah Wells, and he is a Renaissance man, has all sorts of different opinions on many different things. And he has also graciously started a podcast called Further Reaches, right?
Far Reaches, yes.
Far Reaches. I should know this.
Still in flux, really. It's developing. As most things, as we go forward, we learn new things and keep adjusting.
So he had this brilliant idea where we all sort of loosely know each other that are on the podcast, but I haven't met Joel.
I don't think we've all four been in the same spot physically at the same time, and as luck would have it, I think I'm sort of the, I'll say hub of the group, since I kind of know everybody fairly well, and some of you know each other, but like I said, I don't think we've all officially met. So I prefer Catalyst, I guess I would say. Yeah.
So I have to say, I was a little hesitant because we brought these. We're all similar in many ways, but we're all very diverse in different ways, and we're
Absolutely.
in very diverse locations. And I was like, I don't know if I want to get on a podcast and share my thoughts with all the. I don't know. You don't know. It's sort of wild card what everybody else is going to say. They're like, oh, well, that would be associated bad on me, and so I have some quandaries about that. But then I thought, well, never say well in mud hole, and I just decided to go with it. And I'm so glad I did, because we listened to the first episode and like there were some uncomfortable moments in it, but that's sort of life. And but overall, the overall thing was good. And I think that before the coronavirus, that it was important that we get re-engaged in this digital age of talking over complicated issues, especially within peer groups, because I think we're even losing that.
Absolutely. I think we're afraid to talk about it with some of our friends, and you touched on it too. On the there's four of us kind of as the basis of this podcast, and two of us, you and I, are from Lake County, although different parts of Lake County, but from the farther you get away from home, the smaller it shrinks. And so we're both from Lake County, and the other two, Raleigh and Joel, are both from the Pendleton area, Umatilla County, and the other part of the state, northeast part of the state. So and as you said, we've all gone such different routes from our home country. Even if you just looked at you and I, such different routes, kept in touch, but ended up in different parts of the world, and same thing with those two. So I think oftentimes we're afraid that we're going to offend our friends, maybe, or maybe you lose a friend because we talk about something that might be sacred to them. But I think we forget that we're supposed to be friends, and even if we're not, I think we need to have that baseline of, we don't all agree. If we did, it would not be interesting at all. I mean, there would only be one of everything if we all agreed on everything, right? There'd just be one car you'd buy because you wouldn't want anything different. So we forget that. And I think that you can have conversations about something from different points of view, and you might walk away disagreeing, and that's okay. But you had that sort of just conversation about why you think what you do. And that's what I'm always curious about, is like, not necessarily what your answer is, but why you think that way, and what led to that, and what information have you gathered up that gives you that point of view. I think that's always very interesting.
And I think it's interesting. So we went from 2 weeks ago being, as a nation, as a sort of the community of the United States, being politically divided, a lot of different diverging opinions. And just like 9/11, we have the coronavirus hit, and then you really see how not divided we all are, and how quickly we can rally to help everybody out, and how quickly those tribal ideas that we hold dear in times of non-crisis just fall away and are no longer important. We're very weird race, us Americans.
Absolutely not. I was talking to another friend of ours the other day, and he'd had some friends who were hair on fire. This is the end of all. See, this is what happens. And I was like, nah, I don't see that at all. I'm maybe too optimistic, but I see we're going to come back even stronger, like we always have, I think, and we're going to learn new things. And I, for one, certainly going to appreciate just every day even more than I already did. And I've been accused of just being too happy at all times of the day. But I think, just being able to turn on the TV and watch sports, or to go to a sporting game, and you think about just all the interactions we have every day that we've taken so much for granted, and travel and everything else, and just having this time. I've been half sequestered at home anyways, just because of looking for jobs and doing that sort of thing and not wandering around. But you just miss that interaction and this whole other landscape that we just kind of throw over your shoulder and take for granted. And I think, if nothing else, we're going to have that renewed appreciation of that. But more importantly, I think that when something like this happens, everybody tends to just push all these other things aside and just dig in for what really matters. And that's the great thing about what I think of as us as a whole, is what we do is just people, not necessarily Americans.
So, because it's all doom and gloom coronavirus, let's transition away. I have been wanting to talk to you since I would start looking at doing embryo transplants and anyways, learning about different sort of getting into that world. And I had a fascinating conversation about how we are coming to understand genomics and like how fast the whole sector is accelerating. And we'll get back to coronavirus here in a little bit, but I wanted to pick your brain on that. So I'll tell you what I heard that was amazing.
Sure.
So now they're trying to collect larger DNA samples because the technology's evolving so quickly that they want to have samples to come back to as they learn more. As the map DNA the data starts to show more and more associations and relationships. So they want to be able to come back to that DNA and test it, because it is at such a high. What's coming next is going to be such a different level of what we have now. So right now we can get the DNA of the bull and we can trace it back, the calf back to the bull and the mother, and we can, as long as we have the DNA of everybody, then we can figure it out. Now they're talking, we'll be able to transfer lineage without having all that information like this, because we have so much data now that we can associate different things. And we're starting to understand in certain isolated groups of like different breeds, characteristics in those breeds that might actually be shared by other breeds, and that these huge groupings, you could actually start tailoring your genetics based on individual traits and characteristics that are just within your own herd that you want to accelerate. And that stuff is all coming to fruition much quicker than we anticipated. And so, like, most of the stuff that you see on the market now, I think there's a lot of good stuff on the market, is basically like the Flintstones and pushing their little car around with their feet compared to what a Tesla is now. I mean, that's how far the leap has been just in the last year. Would you say I'm misreading that, or am I sort of?
I think you're on the right track for sure. I know it's often been the case, especially within the pure breed associations, that you keep those historic samples, be it blood or hair or even tissue sample units, the TSU tubes. That's one of the standards, is that you can be able to save those samples and go back and review the historic data or resample as science progresses. When the first arrays came out, SNP-based arrays, which are oddly enough now kind of going somewhat to the side, but still the standard. When they first came out, you didn't have that much information on them. They were very expensive, several $100s, almost $1,000. And now the information on those is much like our cell phone, if you will. It's smaller, much more detail, and much more inexpensive. So yes, and you hit it on the head with every time you take a DNA sample and that's correlated with phenotypic data, then the DNA becomes more powerful. And I think we're going to see the continued progression of that as we take more and more samples and have that quality feedback. And you can close those loops on refining what that is. And And so, yeah, I'm sure we're going to take numerous steps forward as far as what information we can get about current generations, how much we can read back just based off one sample, looking at all the commonality, almost a 23andMe sort of approach, where you can send in your DNA and like, oh yeah, you're from 89% of you is from this region, if you will. Believe it or not, me, I'm 99.2% from the Highland area. And so, but it's similar. I think it's going to get that way in cattle. It's just about the numbers. And most importantly, the phenotypic or the physical tie back to that, i.e., birth weight and those characteristics. I think people, one of the things I harp on is just because you're taking DNA doesn't mean you forget all the handwritten data that's still so important, because we are still in those early phases of this, relatively speaking. But there's a long way to go forward. And so every time you connect those 2 points together, it's stronger for the next time. So we've talked numerous times, I think, about just the ultimate opportunities that are waiting that you can do with one DNA sample, be it parentage, also, validating where that animal came from and its whole life process, and if it was under stress or not, et cetera. I think we're going to continue to see that advancement more and more from one particular sample.
Oh, talk about cost. I was so happy to have a conversation about DNA costs where like it's come down to $10 now. And that's not just for breed. That's not just for looking at matching a breed back so you can get that 50% uh, parentage thing, but it's also like the whole spectrum of it now. Whereas it was what used to be like $20, $40, now it's come down considerably. And I thought it didn't come down fast enough, but I'm glad to hear that we're moving down there. I think it's probably mostly availability of machines and that kind of stuff.
That's a large chunk. I don't know if it's at $10 yet, or maybe some things are, but there's still people involved with the labor. The DNA extraction is probably one of the most labor intense parts of the whole process, as far as getting things in and getting it plated and correctly on tracked, to make sure that this sample is the one that we're actually tracking all the way through. It's becoming more and more automated for sure. So yeah, I think there's going to be a point where it won't get much cheaper, just because there's still people involved and things of that nature. But as far as you consider where it was 5 years ago to what it is today, I think it's certainly impressive. And like I always harp on too, that everybody gets different management decisions out of the DNA. So I was always intrigued about why somebody's using it, what decisions, how in depth they really are, how early in their whole process are they using DNA to make choices. Is it after they've already weaned? Is it when they're a year and a half in, or is it as soon as they hit the ground? That's the cool part about it.
Yeah, and I think that this is so a lot of people know that I have a extreme interest in growing this grass-fed market. Um, Most of everything is geared towards for cattle. Primarily, majority of the effort's been put into dairies. There's a considerable amount of effort that's been put into conventional beef, into conventional beef. But I think the greatest bang for the buck could be grass fed, because you're looking for. I don't. It's not going to make a bunch of people a lot of money, but it's going to help the grass fed guys because we'll be looking for traits in animals that not necessarily common to the rest. So I could
Mhm.
see that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. In the next 10 years, you could see a real divergent of type of animal that goes into the conventional beef system versus the one that goes into grass-fed systems.
Absolutely. I think if you can find specific markers, perhaps that for an animal, say that responds much better to a grass diet, grass fed, things of that nature. Maybe if I'm not totally off base, it's a little bit longer feed season to finish, so you can look at for some of those slower maturing, perhaps genes. It takes some research, but I think within 10 years, if there's the demand for that, and most importantly, the phenotypical feedback of those animals that you're finding that are selecting well for that. Absolutely. And I think you can make that divergence, if you will, much sooner in the whole market scheme. Like, okay, these animals are certainly tracking better for a grass-fed market. These will fit much better into the traditional feedlot market, and you market them as such. I think so. I'm always about that better decision sooner is really one of the main advantages I see in this genomic data.
Yeah, because like I know that I have a bull in my herd that I have to in the next year figure out what to do because I know that has a calf that's going to wean at 800 pounds or at 600 pounds. And compared to the rest of the Akiushis, he's outperforming his peers by
Mm-hmm.
150 pounds at weaning. So I got to isolate that one and find him. So because those animals do exist, they're outliners within a breed that most people poo-poo about how fast they finish, but those animals are within that breed. We just have to get better at finding them. And
So
there's so
are
few
you
of them.
using parentage to figure out what calves he's had, or can you tell, obviously, to some degree, the much larger, but to kind of validate to you which pairings are better?
I'm gonna have to do that because yeah, it could. You're right. A lot of it could have come from the dam, I guess. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that I have a bull, and I think I have an Akiushi bull that's outperforming his peers. So, and I could be wrong, but that's how we'll determine it is by doing a better, more in-depth look in that. And then if I can isolate that bull, then that's something that's a real start there.
Certainly, you could. Yeah. So you've not done any genotyping on that bull either, or his peers.
Just the basics, so that we can prove that the calf is 50%
Okay.
Akiushi. So we got to
Yeah.
look deeper. So I have to just look deeper into that whole thing. And he
Because I'd
just
be
popped.
curious his specific lineage too.
Yeah, he performed just like my and like you said, it could be the dam, but I think that he's performing just like the bulk of the rest of our bulls that are natural
Mm.
generic bulls. So, anyways, that was
That's
my
awesome. Yeah, finding those
yeah.
ones that match your environment the best. That's long been our some of our spirited conversations as well. Is matching your cows to your environment. You
Oh,
don't
I
drive a
think that
Ferrari down a dirt road, so find what fits best.
that opens up a whole new thing. What do you think of Walmart's push to homogenize the overall? And you could not answer if you want, but there's this huge push for them to go prime, to homogenize straightly to Angus. And what do you think the long term effects of somebody that buys as many cattle and feeds as many cattle as Walmart? How much do you think that decision is going to have on the overall cattle herd in the United States as far as diversity and robustness and resilience?
I think they're picking up on what's been a phenomenal job by Angus Association already, just for their Angus branded beef. I've always tipped my hat to how well that has been positioned as
Oh yeah.
certified Angus.
So
Um,
I'm not saying anything
no,
bad
I know,
about
I realize just background and that I think that they're just picking up on that. And like, hey, this is a smart thing to do.
yeah.
And I interestingly specific knowledge about this particular point because I know I've been pretty involved in some conversations about this program and the plant they just built in, I think, Georgia,
Hmm.
and they're sourcing cattle from Texas in particular to help fill that role. I don't know overall it's going to be, I think, 5 or 10%, I believe, of their entire market share. The rest still coming, I think, from other sources. So I think on one hand, I appreciate them promoting the Angus brand. I think they're probably it paves the way, in my opinion, for perhaps a grass-fed brand too. If they're going to diversify a bit more, that's how I would approach it if I was speaking with them on that regard.
That's it. Yeah. I've also been talking to some more conventional brands
Some
that
people
want
are
to.
pretty pissed off about it. There's no doubt about that too.
Oh yeah. Well, I've been talking to other conventional brands that want to start having um, different product lines that are more grass-fed oriented.
Hmm. I
My
think
theory is, my theory is, I think that people should do more branded beef, more value-added beef. I don't care if it's grass-fed or if it's
tell
grain-fed,
your
but it
story.
should be
I think
should, and it should be the very best program you could make. And I think so much is left to multiple parts of the supply chain to do that the people that are actually growing the animal get lost. So my soapbox is create a brand, control it as long as you can, the supply chain, and do the very best you can. It doesn't matter if it's grass fed or grain fed or whatever you do.
I
Just
think it's you telling your story, and it's having that. I think it's just so difficult. I've always said like one of the greatest strengths of the cattleman and the biggest weakness is the strength of independence. And I'm just going to go raise my cows and leave me the hell alone. But I think if you can outward your story, no matter what it is, people want to know. Especially these days, people want to know where their meat comes from. They want to know who's making it, and they want to know why. And if you can tell your story and brand it in any way, shape, or form, you're going to be one step ahead. And that's not for everybody. Don't get me wrong. Like some people just want to get up in the morning early and go feed cows and be left alone and sell them. But I think and there's going to be a market for that, but there's going to be different markets, and people are carving out their own markets. Our friend in Colorado is doing that very well, I think. Also, Colorado craft beef. I'm a fan of what they're doing. I think that they got great delivery, they got good selection, and they tell a great story. Can you see me? There we go. Like they tell a great story about their product. My computer keeps going on standby, so I have to make
Oh,
sure that I wake it back up. But
that's fine.
so they took something they knew how to do. They had a passion about it. They had a little bit of knowledge about internet and marketing and social media, and they're moving forward. And so you hit it on the head, Rich. Is brand it, tell your story, and run with it. And people are going to probably poke fun at you. Maybe they might be jealous. They might want to come with you. I don't know, but I think if you got that passion about what you're doing, you're going to be ahead of the game.
I love this. Gert Boyd, the founder of Columbia Sportswear,
Mm-hmm.
she just recently passed. She was one of my favorite entrepreneurs of all times, and her favorite her best saying ever was "Early to rise, early to bed, work like hell, and advertise." I think everybody that comes out of college with a business degree should have some sort of, or agribusiness type of degree should have a lot of marketing, because I think that's something that agriculture is very weak in. But the people in agriculture that are in marketing are amazing at it. So,
Yes. Yeah, it's so fun to be in work with those people and see how their mind. I worked with a great guy when I was at GeneSeeker Neogen. We had a marketing consultant named Jamie Bishop, and so he was like the classic Madison Avenue marketing guy. But he'd been livestock, he'd been agged up a bit. Um, but we were great because I could tell him what I was thinking. Like, I want to do this, or what if we do this kind of. And he's like, and he would give me what the classic marketing term and specifics I was talking about. It's like, well, what you're really talking about is this, Micah, and hammered. I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense. So he could translate for the Micah impaired. And then he could say things to me. I'm like, no, nobody really say that, or this, you need that. And so we could translate back and forth for each other. And I think we got some great stuff done, and we got to be really good friends because of that. Because he was already very, very knowledgeable about the cattle market because he'd been involved for a long time with that. But we took it to the next level by translating for each other what we were thinking and what we needed to get done. And so that was one of my favorite times of working with somebody from marketing, was really battling back and forth. Like, no, nobody would ever say that. And my friends would kick me in the ass if I said that or did this. And so we fine tuned each other a lot. So it was highly entertaining for sure.
it reminds me of the casino campaign in Winnemucca for the Winners Casino, and they had this great marketing campaign, and it looked beautiful. But you drive by the billboard and you realize that somebody in marketing had put the spur on the boot upside
So
down,
doing.
and it just killed all the whole authenticity of it. I mean, it was a great start, but just those little details, and
Those
it's
details. Those
yeah, it's what.
details. Exactly. Yeah.
And
That's what
vernacular is so powerful, and it's so important that people understand the language of different industries, because I think the symbolism of branding is mainly
yeah.
customer outward, but in order to sell it to the people that you're working with, it has to also be inward to the company. They have to believe in it to make it work. It's got to
Well,
be this
yeah, I was
holistic.
going to touch on that with like the spur. Like, well, who are we selling to though, Richard? Because like most people wouldn't know, so they didn't care. Like, oh, that's a cool spur. But the people you're trying to get involved and buy into your crazy idea, they're gonna be like, that's upside down, you dummy. And
Yeah.
so again, it's about who your market is, who your customers are, and having that clear before you go. Because some people would never know or care, but the most important ones you're trying to wrangle up and get on your side, they sure
Oh
do.
yeah. So here's my big philosophical question that I teased
Oh
you.
yeah, I've been waiting to know.
I've been working on this. So, first of all, I want to preface this by saying I have really no problem with the plant-based products that are coming out. I think that they're all
Okay.
amazing. The Impossible Burgers. Um, you know me, I get stuck on those weird ethical and moral things. But so here's my philosophical question: as we move through the world and we continue to innovate. We got SpaceX, and we got Virgin Galaxy, and we got Blue Origin, and we're definitely trying to sort of shed parts of this planet and move on to other things. But my feeling is that we are still very much part of the great ecosystem of the planet. We're also very much still animals, and I see our fascination with technology as a veiled desire to shed ourselves of our links to the animal kingdom. Because a lot of our movement, a lot of our choices actually distance us from the natural world. And I think the ironic part of that is that at the same time, people are deficient of that natural tie back to the land and the environment. So, what's up with the duality?
That's all you want to know? I mean, come on.
Yeah. I'm just working on this. I've been working
Yeah,
on
you
it for
just
about 2 weeks.
driving down the road and
Yeah.
flushing this out as you drive. Okay, geez, Louise. Yeah, that's that'll hurt my brain because you're right. We're pulling away from where we come from. I think that's a constant desire for humans. I think is we're always trying to get away from where we started, which is why you can never go back. I think too, which we've all learned the hard way. But I think we have that inert, built-in desire for that kind of comfort of what we know too. So yeah, I'm probably the biggest conundrum when it comes to all of that. I love technology and all this and that, but not much makes me happier than to set up my range teepee and go camping somewhere and just completely cavemaning for. Well, I'd probably do it forever if I could and get away with it. But I think we lack that. That brings us back to what we're doing today: this social gathering, the social interaction. That no matter how loner we are, eventually we all circle back at time. Even if it's once a year for the rendezvous, you're going to come back for that social time. And so I think that's part of that whole complexity is trying to be moving forward. Yet we're never going to get really rid of who we are and where we came from. I don't think that's always going to be in us somewhere. So it's man, it's meant to suffer, I guess is what I'm getting in that regard. Where that's part of our deal.
I think that, or we have this internal conflict because we're trying to separate ourselves from a system that we're still very much a part of.
Yeah. Totally.
And coronavirus is a perfect example of that. You know, we're more technology advanced than any time in human history. It's always going to be that case.
As far as we know,
yeah. And this virus comes along and just kicks the hell out of us.
You think you're so bad? Watch this. Yeah. I giggle about that a little bit, actually. I do all the time because I always think no matter what we're talking about, I think, we give ourselves way too much credit for the impact that we have on anything that we do. We think, we give ourselves for just who we are. It takes nothing to come along and just smack us around. Think if, for example, giant volcano goes off and just ashes everything. It's just like, you can't do anything about that. You just hunker down and live through it. We think we can fly through the sky. We can talk like this. Like, think about when we were like 8 years old. If you'd have told us we could do this, like our minds would have exploded. Like, I was thinking back to the day, like the very first time I was in high school, I think we were talking about word processing and intranet, and I can talk to somebody in the library from the computer lab. We had a computer lab, in typing class, but like, watch this. I'll send a message to the library, and it blew our minds. And now we're video chatting from the convenience of our offices, like it's nothing, And so, but still, a simple thing comes along, and you want to feel put in your place. Try putting your back out when you make your bed in the morning. You're like, I guess I'm not that bad anymore, am I? It doesn't take much to put us down. I guess that's why we're so resilient too, because there's a thin line between tough and dumb. But it's amazing to think about.
6 pounds of pressure to puncture the skin.
Yeah.
I always get to think. This kind of thinking came from Douglas Adams in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. He talks about we're very clever monkeys and we invade money. Yeah. So at the end of this big thing about talking about how we move money around and we change hands and it makes us happy and everything. And then he goes at the end of the thing, he goes, and some of the monkeys were not happy that they ever came down out of the trees. And some of them even wanted to go back into the water from where they came from. So,
retreat. Yes.
I always like to say that we're just we're very clever space monkeys, but we're not as clever as we think we are.
No, we're not. We're not remotely as smart as we give ourselves credit. I try to remind
myself. We've come a long ways, baby. I mean, look at we're flying off.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Or live in the atmosphere. But
humbling. Yeah.
yes, I still have to get approval from my dog though, so I don't know how that works. But that sort of transitions into this. So agriculture, since this is sort of our thing, and we're doing a podcast now, and you just talked about how we're talking over this, and just this vast spectrum of technologies that are virtually free that agriculture can leverage to improve their productivity, their connectedness, especially in a time when rural communities are on the decline
Mhm.
and there's all these things, but just no will or desire to use it on a large scale basis. What is up with that?
It's the unknown, my friend. I
Ah,
think that's my theory. I think it's just not knowing what it does and how you can use it. And I'll use something as simple. I say simple as parentage for cattle. On one of my trips out to the Northwest, we had several Raleigh actually set us up some great lunch meetings, and I didn't talk about the science. I didn't talk about any of what it was called. I was like, I can tell you which calf came from which bowl with this stuff. People's hat flew off, dropped the taco. Like, what? That's real? Absolutely. And here's how you do it. It's no big deal. So I think that's part of it is just how to use it, and it's not going to blow up. It doesn't kill you. It adds to your day. And it's sometimes it's hard to argue that it makes your life easier because I was thinking today, like, good Lord, if internet goes down, you're going to see chaos. Yeah. Because like, I won't have TV. I won't have cameras. I won't have this.
can't even get that.
Yeah. If internet goes down, that's when stuff's going to get squirrely. And so part of it is, I think, is like the resistance to get on relying on something else that you don't have control over. Part of it is also not knowing exactly how to use it. And I think even for me, I try to keep young up here, but if I don't know how to fully grasp something, sometimes I don't bother with it. Like, it's a fad. It'll go away. I'll stick to what I know. And that's easy to do because you open yourself up. You're vulnerable when you have to go learn about something. Like, I got to go ask my grandkid or my 7-year-old nephew or whatever, how do you TikTok, and so I think that's a large part of it too, is just like admitting that I don't know how to do something. I don't know anything about it. I'm naive. Show me. And that can be really difficult, especially for the ag community, to say, I don't know how to do something.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I struggle with this all the time. I think that the independence is a valuable trait to have in agriculture. It's
Absolutely.
also debilitating in some ways in communicating with the other 98% of the people that exist on this in this nation and on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Because they talk in like we talk about vernacular and a shared language. A lot of the agriculture message is not getting out because we're not using those same communication channels that everybody else is using.
Yeah, you see some of the people online, like Instagram, I think it's Minnesota Farmer or Minnesota Millennial Farmer. I think I wish I knew it off the top of my head what his handle was, but does an awesome job of in the tractor, showing the day, talking to people, and that takes an extra level of commitment to open up like that and to show everybody what you're doing every day and why. But he's got a lot of followers because people want to know, like you said a while ago. Not many people are connected to the land anymore, and I wish I was making this story up, but when I worked for the Cattlemen's Association, I was at a advisory board meeting about, I don't remember what it was, and somebody's like, I don't know why your people even still do this thing with the cows. They should just get their meat from the store like everybody else.
Yeah.
And I had to adjust my hat a bit because that was an educated person on a panel of people involved in the community, quite smart, and I was dumbfounded that actually was said out loud, that they should just go to the store like everybody else. Like, well, if you can sell me the meat making machine or the milk machine, that's one thing, but I had to gently remind them that that's where the stuff to Safeway comes from, so it's that huge disconnect. And so I think any way we can find to bring those two together, you're going to have a greater appreciation on both sides, both from the ag side to the people running around the city that we often dismiss because they're different. And the same thing from the people in the city like you, hayseeds, you morons, just barely smart enough to get your pants on the right way. And it's somewhere in the middle is the truth that we're both pretty smart people. We're both good at what we do. We've just chosen different pathways, and we need each other too. We need the people in the city because they have to come buy all the meat we're going to make, and vice versa. So I always just kind of giggle and then laugh and cry a little bit because every day we get farther apart, but in essence, we're tied closer together because of that. And you touched on it a minute ago about just individuals that way, but society is that way too.
That's when there's a reaction in agriculture to educate the customer. If they're off base, which I think is, I sympathize with it, but when you're 2% of the population, you can't educate 98% of the population if they go off on a tangent that may not be 100% correct. And so I've been trying to visit with people in agriculture about love what your customer loves. It doesn't necessarily mean it's got to be right, but that's the market. They're the ones that are making the decision. So, and the thing that I did when I did the 90 days of LinkedIn, which I still haven't updated all my results from, but what I learned is there's really very few barriers between us, and it's just a matter of taking the time to have a civil conversation with somebody that may have a different opinion than you.
I think it's interesting too that rarely, if it's 1-on-1 or 2-on-2, does it really get completely out of hand as far as disrespect or not listening. As you add people and go up the scale, that divide instantly sort of just creates, and it turns into, I think it's just because it's a crowd perhaps, or it's not as intimate, or you don't feel the connection. I don't know what it is, but if you get two groups that think differently across the street, and the opportunity for chaos is random. But if you have two people sitting in the street of the chair talking to each other, it's probably going to be pretty civil. I mean, if they're open to it, and that's the part that makes me scratch my head.
Yeah, which I found since I started sharing more stuff we're doing on ranch is just all positive experiences, and any things that looked like it was negative, I was just open and transparent. And like I told some people I visited with in San Francisco, I'm all about radical candor and radical transparency.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the only path forward in agriculture, but I seem to be the minority in that.
Well, again, though, it's that vulnerability. That's like,
it's
somebody
huge.
might point out something I'm not doing 100% correct, or maybe I could do a little bit better or different, or hell, maybe I don't even know exactly why I do that way. That's how I was taught, and that's why I do it now.
Well,
sometimes you don't have time to sit there and evaluate everything you do. You just got to get through it so you can survive and do it again.
That's been the nice part for me because I have got questions that have really made me go back and reevaluate different things that I've always done. So
that's tough. That's super tough. I don't care if it's how you write, how you think, how you run cows. If anybody comes up and even I'm playing solitaire, and somebody's looking over my shoulder, I'm like, you could put that queen on that. Hey, buddy, back off. So it's something as simple as that to how I make my livelihood. You don't like it, it's most of the time, So it's natural.
Anyways, let's see. That hit everything. I appreciate you. Anything you want to pitch other than far reaches?
At the moment, no. I think it's just great to talk to you about some of the stuff we've been chatting about for a while and see how it's progressed. And I think I'm thankful and grateful that you've agreed to be on Far Reaches as well. I think you bring one of the more unique perspectives, even though I've heard you caught some guff about just being another rich oil man who's now running cows. So I almost broke my phone laughing at that one. So hey, people are listening. What do you know? Yeah. So.
Well, I managed to take my oil fortune and reduce it quickly.
The quickest way to make $1 million in ranching, start with 2. Yeah. So.
No, this has been a interesting journey. So.
I know. I was just texting a former coworker this morning that we are certainly going to look back on these days and scratch our head and hopefully revel in how we got through it, but certainly going to be those times where we're going to talk about this for a while. I'm pretty sure it's in our society now, something happens and then 20 minutes later, we're on to the next story. But I think this has shown everybody that this is not the case. It's something that we're going to look back and really kind of be a mile marker in our lives and how we react from now on. So I guess, we should be glad we're being part of history. But you don't always get a chance to choose that. So make the best.
Well, I had a surreal experience, and I don't mean to drag this on, but I think it's interesting. Yesterday, I took my 2-year-old to Safeway that I've in our hometown.
Oh yeah,
which is
I've played no football there. Yeah,
it's still the most hospitable place in the town and everything. But I mean, there was like for the first time there was like a shortage on bread. Well, there's the toilet paper thing that nobody understands. But we were walking back, and I realized that there's been pandemics before, but it's never been. We never had this much information about it, this much understanding.
I think that's a large part of it. It's still unknowns. Despite this much information, I think we still have the unknown, which is what really everybody craps their pants over. Maybe that's why they need all the toilet paper. But yeah.
And I'm thinking, I'm walking behind my 2-year-old, and he's running down this Carefree, and I think in 20 years, everybody tell you about how when you were 2 years old, you lived through the first pandemic, and like every pandemic since then has been easily managed, and he's going to think it's no big deal because all these things will be baked in by the time he's 20.
That's true. That's so true, and hopefully so. Yeah, like, man, this whole aisle was empty. Yeah.
Yeah. But we're so. And the other interesting thing about the situation is, when you live in rural America, you realize just how on the edge you are, because it would take a real rush. This is hardly a real rush on the food, but we would be out of food in 3 days for 200
just because you're so far from the supply center.
Yeah, and it would be and we're not many places in the United States are as geographically isolated as we are, but it was a real wake to see. Oh, geez, this is if we ran out of fuel, we ran out of food. The nearest food is 100 miles away, and you don't have. This is weird, but I think we're already on the downhill slide of the recovery. So
I think so too. Yeah,
but a lot of things for people in agriculture to think about, and policymakers.
And just people in general about where things come from, and really just how insignificant we are in this giant ball. Yeah.
And we should, in our country, we are sort of fragile, and we need to take this time to think about how we become more resilient and robust. So, we're living in a downer note, but, but yeah, no.
On a positive note, yeah.
I think this is a great time of reflection for everything, and I have seen probably more interesting and innovative thoughts online in the last 3 days than in the last year, and everything that we talked about last year doesn't seem very effing important anymore.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, I think I've had some awesome conversations with people I have not had a chance to speak. I'll take that back. I've had plenty of chances to speak with these people. I just have not. And I think if nothing else, it's given that, like, it seems so much more special, I guess, now when I talk to somebody. I don't want to lose that, I guess. It's something I want to remember, but like, you hear that person's voice, you're like, man, that just means a lot. And so I hope we remember that too, that everybody we're connected with means something to us, and we shouldn't forget that. And, sometimes it's way better to take a moment to make a phone call than send a quick text. I've learned that too, because it's just not the same.
That's how we should end it.
There we go. Harumph. Yeah.
Get out there and call somebody you haven't talked to in a long time.
My friend Brian says, wow, a phone call from Micah instead of a text. This must be important.
Be courageous. Try a video call.
Yes.
All right.
Next level.
We'll talk to you later.
Richard, thank you so much. Talk to you soon, man.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Ah.